Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa and happy Saturday. I hope you're all having a fantastic weekend. I'm delighted to have again with me Jerry Marzinsky. Jerry, you are really amazing. And I truly honor what you do and the energy and whatever, the courage it's taken for you to come forward with this information. So, welcome back, Jerry. It's really good to have you.
Good to be
And then, of
back.
course, yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you. And then, lovely to meet Janet Swain, who actually, she and Jerry are colleagues now when it comes to the Mace Energy System. And Janet, I want to just do a little sweet little intro, short and sweet. Um, you've started something called the causism. I will always get that wrong. Institute, right?
Yeah.
And you're a retired nurse specializing in mental health, which is obviously regarding trauma, emotional dysregulation, depression, and you've worked in and outpatient facilities, you've worked in the military, you've worked in prisons, as well as institutions. So, wow, quite an array of experience you have there as well. So, I want to just say to you, welcome, and it's really, really great to have you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and thank you for having me. I appreciate any exposure we can give to what Jerry and I do. So thank you for having us.
It's such a pleasure.
Janet and I kind of were in the same boat after we got out of graduate school or nursing school. It's like after all this stuff they taught us, we hit the front lines and saw that what they were doing just wasn't working. The medications weren't working. The psychotherapy wasn't working. They were treating symptoms and not the cause. And nobody was getting better.
No. I make this distinction only because it's important to let people know why I make this distinction. I'm a nurse practitioner, and that in America, that means we prescribe medications. So we work with the doctor, but I will diagnose and prescribe. I don't say that for any kind of ego because my training was nonsense. I say that to let people know I have a history of prescribing meds that not only didn't work, but they were harmful.
Right.
And so I have a background of really understanding the mechanisms behind these meds and what they were supposed to do and what they didn't do.
I would actually like to just ask you there on that point, someone like myself, and ask you this because someone like myself, for some reason, I've put a pill in my mouth, and to try and swallow it, I want to throw up. It's just my whole body rejects meds mostly. So my whole life, I've pretty much never, if I had to take it, I had to crush it up because that's the only time it was weird, right? But I would get so mad, especially in recent years, hearing about how many people were suddenly being put onto Prozac. Prozac was the main one over here. And then kids on Ritalin. That was also the main one. And I was like up in arms thinking that these shrinks are killing people. They're literally numbing people up deliberately. So I want to know from you, as someone who has prescribed these medications in the past, were you at the time aware of the damage they were doing, or is it kind of sold to you like it's the new best invention?
I drank the Kool-Aid. Not
Right.
only did I drink the Kool-Aid and I was proud of the knowledge I gained. I was good at absorbing this knowledge. I knew my meds. I knew the symptoms. I went to the top line conferences every year. Um, Jerry, I even forget the name of the guy, the pharmaceutical guy. I probably shouldn't say his name. He wrote the medication book for mental health. We called it the Bible for our meds. I can't remember his
Oh,
name.
the DSM?
No, not the DSM. This is like our PDR for meds.
Oh,
He wrote it. I'd go to his conferences every year because that was the conference to go to. I drank the Kool-Aid. I'm a believer. I'm a spiritual girl, and I'm grateful for this. But it didn't take long to wake up when you're out in the front line. You start going, what is this? What's this nonsense? We're not curing anything. We're not helping anything. We're numbing and dumbing down. That's all we're
Right.
nobody's getting any better. And I'm sure you saw, like I did, is that the akinesia, the side effects of these medications, where the neurological damage is actually taking place with the uncontrolled shaking and the tongue darting and that kind of stuff. So that's actual neurological damage being done by these psychotropic drugs. And then what I saw at the hospitals where I worked at, rather than taking these patients off of those psychotropic drugs, they would add cogentin to mask the symptoms and then continue poisoning them with these medications. They were actually causing neurological damage, permanent neurological damage with these drugs.
So I always wanted to write a book after I got out of the prison on how many people ended up in jail once they started on antidepressants. Because antidepressants have a tendency to make you manic. They have a tendency to agitate, to irritate, to make you angry. And people think, oh, I need more. They don't realize, no, this is a side effect. And there's plenty of stories of people who end up in jail on domestic violence, on manic behaviors that put them in jail. So you've seen this, right, Jerry?
I've seen it, and there's a number of people who've killed other people on those antidepressants too. And I think one of the warnings is suicidal ideation.
Absolutely.
So it was Eli Lilly, when they came out with Prozac, who made up that false lie that mental illness was a chemical imbalance of some kind. They knew it was a lie at the time, but they went with it anyway. And then they started teaching this crap in the universities, and they're still doing it, even though it's been disproved over and over and over again. These medications do not cure anything. They merely treat symptoms, as does typical psychotherapy. They're only looking at the symptoms. They're not looking at the cause.
Yeah.
So Janet and I both were, I think our entire careers were looking for something that actually worked.
Yes.
And when I stumbled on the Mace Energy Method, I saw that it worked time after time after time. It worked reliably. It got at the cause of the mental illness, and it would negate it. Okay?
Pretty quickly, too.
And the therapist does not have to know what the trauma is.
Right.
Exactly.
It works anyway.
Yeah.
So if you're sexually abused or something bad really happened to you, you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to. It works anyway.
May I add my 5 cents worth here about that?
Please, yes.
Well, I have to tell you guys, I had the privilege of having 2 Mace sessions with Jerry. I believe they must have been about 2 months apart, somewhere around there. But I have to tell you, I've been a healer and I've created my own style of healing over the past 25 years. And I've also tried to make it in a very non-invasive, simplistic, get to the core type of way. But I have to say this is on a similar vein, but it's even better. I have to say that. I never in my life thought I'd say that, right? But it's even less invasive. And I want to say to anyone who doesn't know what this is or hasn't had a look yet, no one does anything dodgy to you. You are completely compass mentis 100% of the time. You asked 1 or 2 questions, you reply, and you work with whatever the feelings are that come up. You're working with your own energy all the time. And Jerry or the other Mace therapists, and I'm pretty sure they must be pretty well qualified as well, will guide you. So you guided, and you yourself give yourself your own answers. You release the trauma in a way that I can't explain. But for me, my triggers, I've done a lot of work on myself over the years, but there were a couple of triggers that just, oh boy, man, were they just triggering at the most inopportune moments. And those have gone. And I want to tell you, and it's not just about having the triggers gone, it's about what happens in your life once the triggers go. Because your whole energy calms down, you're at peace. And when you now start creating from a place of peace, everything that you're creating is tasting different. The vibration is different. The people you attract are different. You know, your whole life, your answers come to you a lot quicker. You know, when you meditate or pray, you'll get your I have now. It's like, boom, there it is. Wow, thank you. I didn't have to wait a day anymore. You know, that sort of stuff. It's like suddenly everything becomes calm and you can figure things out a lot quicker. You're not triggered. And it's by the same things you were yesterday or last year or last week. So I just want to say that for those of you who don't know what it is and are perhaps considering having it done, and I would highly recommend that you have it done. And it's not invasive. It's not like you're going to therapy. No one is digging into your past and digging into your traumas and upheavaling all the bones and the skeletons that you wanted to keep there. You can keep them there. That's the nice part about this. You can keep them there if you want to. They'll disappear on their own.
So Mace is an energetic therapy. It's nothing like regular psychotherapy. And it is the spirit that does the healing. The Mace practitioner only hooks the negative energy up to the positive energy of the spirit. Mm-hmm. So John Mace, who came up with this system, he wasn't a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a social worker, thank God, because he probably would have never came up with this system if he was. No. You know, like Janet and I had to wade through tons of garbage. I mean, year after year after year of programming to break free after seeing that what they taught us didn't work. Yeah, just didn't work. It was virtually useless. But Mace is an energetic therapy. So thoughts are energetic, feelings are energetic, memory is energetic. You are energetic. You know, your spirit is energetic. And that's one thing that Mace takes into account, the spirit. Now, Mace calls it the human energy unit, I believe it was. And it is steadfastly positive. Okay. Your spirit is positive energy. Now, what happens during a trauma is negative energy gets injected into your system. And the ego takes it and buries it in the subconscious. So it's still alive. It's not gone anywhere. But it acts like a trigger or a computer virus. Right? So say somebody abused you, some specific person did something awful to you. That feeling stays around and it's awful. So the ego comes and says, let me handle this. It takes it and it buries it and puts it out of your conscious awareness, but it's still alive in your subconscious. So what happens is every time you run into somebody who resembles that person that abused you, there's a trigger and it goes off and it produces a fight or flight reaction or an avoidance reaction, but it's always upsetting. And the universe takes care of sending you these people in an endless flow.
Exactly.
No matter where you go, these people will show up and they will irritate the dickens out of you.
And you can't understand that you are the common denominator, right?
Right. So the ego, rather than saying, hey, there's something wrong with you, projects that back out onto that person and said, it's them who is causing you the problem. It's got nothing to do with you. They're out there and you can feel the negative vibes coming from them. They're irritating you. So it must be them. You know, it's got nothing to do with you.
And the mind is so creative, right? We all see whatever we want to see about
Yeah.
the person in that situation.
Also like to grab a hold of that victim mentality. I'm a victim. Oh,
Right.
why
Well,
is
I'm a victim of this guy, and he's victimizing me. He's making me feel bad. So it gets projected out onto
Yeah,
people and the situations around you. Now, you can have a number of negative identities. I mean, they originate from trauma. And the way they treat trauma isn't very effective either. Janet could probably talk more about that than I can, because I didn't deal with that as much. I was dealing more with psychotics and state hospital mental health, psych crisis and emergency rooms, that kind of stuff. But
right.
the trauma causes a negative identity. So that stuff that's buried is a negative identity. It's like a computer virus. Okay? And the way it feels is that you get into some kind of trouble, or you get into an argument with this particular kind of person that was similar to that abused you, and you get in a lot of trouble, and you swear, "Oh, I'm never going to get in that again. I'm never going to let that happen again." And 6 months later, you're right in the middle of it again. It's right there in your face again. You're in the same
Exactly.
trouble again. That's
Yeah.
a negative
Exactly.
identity operating.
loop?
Okay.
Loop.
Every negative feeling is the result of a negative identity somewhere buried in there.
Mhm.
But isn't it interesting that so often you will find that the underlying issue is very similar? So you might be dealing with, say, for example, betrayal, and you might have a partner betray you, a, a business partner betray you. You might have friends stab you in the back. You might feel like everyone is cheating on you. So there will oftentimes be the similar underlying issue, but playing itself out differently.
Yep.
And when we catch the one issue, all of that other stuff dissolves. And that's the beauty about this kind of working.
That core ruin has tentacles.
Yeah.
So when you remove the core ruin, it's like a root, and you're pulling out all of the roots of it too. So when you're doing a full Mace session, they think there's all these people they have to work on, but when they remove like a core individual they've had trouble with, they kind of remove a lot of the people connected to it. Do you know what I'm saying, Jerry? It's like,
Yeah. I look at it like a chain. So you break one link in the chain, which is the rune, and that's the main trauma that caused this linkage of betrayal. You break that, and all those betrayals go down. That whole string goes down. So you don't have to deal with each individual one. They all collapse at once.
yeah.
And
That's so
they stay gone. They're
Pretty
out of your universe. They're no longer there.
It's like what you're saying. Sorry, Jerry. It's like what you're saying. Your spirit heals you, and when spirit is involved, transformation. Because very often we transmute. So in other words, we're going to go from love to hate. Like we can go along that scale of love to hate, but until we've understood the trauma or just let it go, we're going to transmute other than transform. So transformation happens once we've let all the triggers go. And that's when, right, that peaceful feeling of nothing around that situation. All that occurs now is you have understanding. It's like it doesn't actually matter. You've understood it on a deeper level that doesn't really require words. That's my experience. That's been my experience of it.
Well, the emotional charge is gone. So
Yes.
what Mace was a ship captain, so he had to have a knowledge of magnetism with magnetic compasses and electricity, and he was also widely read. I mean, he was, as far as I'm concerned, he's a Sigmund Freud. He's brilliant. So he pieced the way that energy flows in the body. Okay, so the spirit is your main energy unit. If your spirit leaves, you're dead. You're no longer around. There's no energy left. You can't fix a dead body. Right? So what Mace found was that energy flows from negative to positive. right? The spirit is positive. Negative identities are negative bodies of energy stuck in the energy field that disrupt it. And what Mace does is makes the connection between the negative energy and the positive absorbs it. It will take it and actually absorb it and transmute it to more positive energy. And then that negative body of energy will be gone. You'll still remember what the trauma was. You'll still remember it happened, but there won't be any negative feeling associated with it. And there won't be any negative feeling associated with anybody who was like the person who caused the trauma. You'll recognize them. You'll go, okay, I know what kind of person this is, but there won't be any emotional reaction to it.
Right.
You know?
Can I
So
give you a spiritual aspect of that?
yes.
Please.
So there's a very powerful spiritual aspect.
Yeah. So
to-
trauma is an open door for dark energy. And I'll
yes.
give you an example. When you're traumatized and you don't know it, there's a lie involved. Let's say the lie is, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. And that was deposited somewhere in your journey. I'm not good enough. Well, all you have to do is be triggered by something. I just went to a fun event last week with a lot of women. If I have that lie, I'm not good enough, and I'm trying to speak, but I'm not being heard, or other people are speaking over me, then I'm going to hear in my head, you don't matter, you're not good enough. And I'm going to hear a lot of floods of lies. Now, am I generating that? No. Is my higher power, my God, generating that? No. So where's it coming from? Who's feeding me all this negative thoughts? Where's that coming from? I removed the trauma. I don't receive those messages anymore. I don't have to. They're lies. Those are lies. They don't belong to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's
Absolutely.
a negative with every major trauma, there's a negative decision that you make about yourself, about who you are as a result of that trauma, or who you are as the cause of it. And you don't make good decisions when you're in the midst of a trauma.
No.
They're always bad decisions. So you may make, like Janet said, something bad may happen to you, and you just go, well, I'm just not good enough because of this thing that happened to you, and you're not even aware of it.
Mm-mm.
You know, it's stuck in your mind. It's there. It's operating all the time, but you're not aware of it, and it causes you major problems because you then become not good enough because you start acting like you're
Exactly.
not good enough.
And that's when you open up that gap even more for these predator entities,
Yes.
because to come in, it's like I say, your life is your business. So it's like a fence that has a hole in it. It's your fence. And if you know that a predator is coming in through the hole of your fence, and yet all you're going to do is stand there and shoot the predator, it's going to bring thousands of others, right?
Exactly.
But if you work on mending the fence in the proper way, there's no more predator that's going to try and get in there. They get in where they smell blood. And the way that it is, we were speaking about it the other day, it's like trying to tell these things not to latch on is like trying to tell a lion not to hunt. That's what they do. They are parasites, and a parasite does what a parasite does, right? It's up to us to get ourselves out of that wavelength or frequency, and people must never think frequency is a new age term. Frequency is energy. It's been here since the beginning of time. Just because it's used by people in a different way doesn't mean that it's not real. So your frequency determines whether you're going to be attracting attachments or not. If you are a lower, heavier, denser frequency, of course you make it easier for the lower, denser frequencies to suck onto you.
Beta.
But as you raise up, they can't.
Yeah.
So it's up to us to make sure that we keep ourselves in alignment, then that does not happen.
Yeah, the frequency aspect is important because negative identities are low frequency. They're not vibrating at the same speed as your spirit is, which is very high frequency. So they drag you down. And the more of these traumas you have, the more negative identities you have, the more your thoughts are affected, your feelings are affected, your behavior is
Absolutely.
affected, how you see the world is affected. It just puts a dark glasses over your entire spirit,
Yeah.
and it drags you down. Now, I spent my life studying the voices that schizophrenics hear. Now, these are negative entities. They're very negative, parasitic entities. And you look at schizophrenics; they have been traumatized to the max.
Right.
Everything sets them off. They're full of negative identities. So even though Mace may not get rid of the voices, it will get rid of a lot of the stuff if the person's willing to work with you, get rid of a lot of the stuff that these voices feed off of. And once you clean out all that, they will starve to death. They will leave. They'll find somebody else to go pick on.
They're gonna go look for another chocolatey person with lots of fear and pain and sadness oozing out of them. Yeah, that's how it works. That's how it works. It's how it works, unfortunately. One would think that if we feel sad, you know, the universe will send us something to make us feel happy. No, it doesn't work that way. We're going to attract more of the same into our lives, because that's just the way that it is. Janet, I'm interested to find out from you. I know, in our previous shows, we've spoken to Jerry, who also got to a point of realizing in his career that these voices that the schizophrenics were hearing were in fact not hallucinations, but in fact entities that had attached due to reasons we've just spoken about. I'd be interested to know at what point did you realize that this was not okay anymore?
So anybody who's listened to our podcast, it's going to be redundant because I've shared this story. My initial waking up was when I was working in a doctor's office in private practice. I started to notice one patient in particular knew a little bit too much about me, not in a stalking way, but in a very personal way. And this person would be talking to me in a mocking fashion, which they do. The voices mock. They'll curse at us. They'll tell the patient, don't listen to her. She's a blah, blah, blah idiot, curse words. And so they won't listen and they'll mock you. But this individual knew a little too much about me personally. And back then I was not on social media. So even if I was, these were things you wouldn't know. These are things maybe even my husband wouldn't know. They're like intimate things that I, think or struggle with or I didn't, just things they shouldn't know. And when my face would be like shocked a little, like what? And you'd see them laughing. They're laughing. And I always say the hair in the back of your neck starts to go up when you start to realize, what is this? What is this? The big wake up call was when I was working in the county jail. I had somebody try and hang themselves. It was a serious attempt. They were found blue. They were a code. When they cleared them in the infirmary, that my job was to go in and see what's going on. And I think originally I said they were speaking in a ancient language. I hate to say this, I don't know Latin. It could have been Latin. This inmate was speaking some sort of intelligent language I didn't understand. He knew very detailed things about me. The guard who was in the cell with me, big guy, big black man, I felt safe with him there. this entity was telling, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. This inmate that was talking to me, I'm sure was an entity, was telling me he wanted to be dead. He wanted out of the body, and he was firm on that. He had no use for the body anymore. He wanted out. It wanted out. At the time, I was thinking, I don't know what this is. I'm a spiritual girl. I'm thinking this looks demonic. This looks very demonic. But oh my gosh, did I say that out loud? That's crazy. What am I thinking? When I left the cell, my mission was to tell the team he will kill himself. He wants out of the body. But I looked at the guard who went out with me, and I find out he's a pastor also. And I said, I don't know what that was. That was very uncomfortable. That was very violating. I said, it feels demonic. And he goes, that was a demon. That was my wake up call. A lot of times people who are possessed, these entities, if they're like, this is my belief. I don't know if it's true or not. This man got a life sentence for chronic consistent child molesting, child rape. Like Jerry knows this, we don't know what they're in for. We don't want to know. We want to have an unbiased opinion to help them. So I didn't know at the time why he was in, found out later. He had a life sentence. That entity wanted out of the body. He was going to kill the person. So I don't completely know spiritual realm. So I don't know the logic behind, did it want a different body? What did it want? I don't know. Maybe Jerry can answer that. But I know what I saw wasn't human. That was the beginning. Now it's pretty obvious. It's like a hive mind. They all act the same. They all act the same. They all hear the same type of voices. They all will have suicidal spirit. They all will be very derogatory, mocking, and very ugly to the being they're either oppressing. I think possession is very rare, but oppression, I think it's more common than people want to see. I think oppression is pretty common.
I think most of the prisoners that I've worked with were in that kind of state. And yeah, these voices run the same patterns over and over and over again. You know, and that we identified like 23 of them. You can see them on my website at jerrymarzinsky.com. Okay, they're the same pattern over and over and over again. They say the same things over and over and over again. You're worthless. You're no good. You're stupid. You're ugly. Nobody likes you. You'll never amount to nothing. It's just the same negative garbage over and over and over again. And you know, one thing I noticed early on was that when the voices attacked these people, after they were attacked, they had no energy left.
No.
You know, over and over again, they were just devoid of energy. They couldn't get out of bed, couldn't even get up to go get breakfast, and all they were doing was laying, tossing, and turning in bed all night. One guy told me that he felt like he was digging ditches in the hot sun all day. That's how drained he was. And then time after time after time, I would ask these hundreds of them, how'd you feel before the voices came? How'd you feel after they came? All of them would say, I felt worse. I had no energy after they were left, after they left. And this was consistent. There was a one-to-one correlation between the voices attacking these people and their energy being gone.
Yeah.
So I'd ask them, you know,
being drained. Yeah, it's like these entities,
and they didn't even realize it until I brought it up. And once I brought it up, they go, "Oh yeah. After the voices leave, I feel totally drained." And then you'd ask them, "Well, where'd your energy go? You didn't use it. You're laying in bed all night. Where'd it go?" The consistent answer was, "I don't know." Over and over, "I don't know. I don't know." You know, and I'd tell them, I said, "Well, you know, you've heard the voices thousands and thousands of times over the years, and every time that the voices hit you, your energy level disappeared. It was gone. Your energy was gone. Where did it go?" "Well, I don't know." You know, some of them would go, "Well, they took it." You know, but for the ones that didn't know, you'd say, "Okay, if you stuck your hand in a fire 1,000 times and each time you got burned, What was burning you? They had no trouble saying the fire. But then if you say, okay, if you heard the voices 1,000 times and each time they came, you had no energy left, where'd your energy go? I don't know. They were being blocked from that awareness. And when I started working in the emergency room and thinking, like, what is a couple of the most important things I could tell these people before, because they didn't want us working with them. They wanted them out of the emergency room. And that was our job. What are they going to do? Are they going to commit suicide, send them to the mental health center, hospitalize them, let them go, do something with them, but get them out of the emergency room? That's all they cared about.
Yeah.
They didn't care about anybody working with them. So the two most important things that I saw that they needed to know, the schizophrenics, was that one, the voices weren't them. They were coming in from outside. And number two, that they were draining them.
Mhm.
And those are the two things that the voices did not want them to know. They would get very upset when I went to tell them that the voices are parasites and they're draining you. If they were going to go off, they'd go off with that bit of information. So I had to determine very carefully who I could trust, which patients I could trust with that information, how much they already knew. Yeah. There was one
Because
lady.
they defend, I mean, these entities will defend that position, right? They'll attack you for daring to insinuate that they have a demon. How dare you? That type of stuff, right? So they become very defensive. And that is a typical case of, of defense, really, is to attack in order to defend your position. Where, it's crazy that, because it's like, so I so see it's like, how dare you say that I have stuff inside of me,
Well, that's what I was worried about with the parents. So, I was always afraid that they would go run and tell a psychiatrist what I told them. So I had to be very careful with who I spoke to. But what they really didn't like was the patient knowing that they were parasites, that they were draining their life energy. Because if you had a big parasite, if you had a big leech on you, you wouldn't just sit there and look at it. You'd try to get rid of it. And that's the same thing with these guys. Once they realize that these things are parasites, they go, "Well, I don't want that happening." And once they realize that they're not them, now they have a chance to fight back. But what psychiatry is telling them is that these are hallucinations. Your mind is broken. You've got a chemical imbalance. All these things are lies. It's like that gate over Dante's Inferno where they go, all who go through this gate leave all hope behind. So psychiatry is doing more harm than it is good in most cases. Not to say these medications aren't serving an important purpose, because believe me, I've seen prisoners that if it wasn't for those medications, they'd be hurting a lot of people. They'd be killing a lot of people. There's people that are so far gone that that's all that can be done for them. They're unreachable, is these medications. But for the vast majority of people who are hearing voices or who are depressed or anxious or manic, those medications will make them worse.
Yeah. I'd love to play off that, what Jerry just said. And a lot of people might get angry at what I'm going to say, but I'm pretty convinced it's been shown to me this is true. The other thing that the industry likes to do is take these personality disorders and make them so broken there's no hope. And one of the biggest ones that we see that where people experience severe trauma is narcissistic abuse. Severe trauma, if you have a narcissistic parent or if you had a narcissistic spouse, it's some of the worst abuse. But here's the thing. All narcissistic behavior behaves the same way. It's all behaving the same way, just like schizophrenics, just like voices. And so I keep losing my hearing, so I don't know if somebody's trying to distract me. Narcissists all look the same. They all act the same. They all behave the same, expressing it out of their own personality. That's a hive mind. So if you tell me, oh, this person's a narcissist, they can't be healed, I'm going to challenge you on that because I've actually seen it.
I agree.
This is a spiritual sickness. This is somebody who is being heavily oppressed by their own trauma. And
exactly.
Yeah. And
Isn't it interesting
it
that
is.
you? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That was probably me.
Isn't it interesting that you often find, I mean, nowadays the buzzwords are narcissist and empath. Now, as much as what I agree that exists, I think it's overutilized hugely as well. But I find it interesting that the narcissist and the empath often end up together, so to speak. Because isn't it interesting that the empath often has no boundaries?
Yes.
Neither does the narcissist.
Yes.
So they're coming from opposite sides of the spectrum, and they're clashing in the middle. And of course, the poor empath gets stripped to threads. But the narcissist, actually, underneath it all, is a huge empath, because at some point, that child got so badly hurt and so badly damaged that they had to shut down everything. And there's a big infection in that part of their being. That's the way I would say. So
yes,
both of them are coming from equally a hurt place, but expressing it differently. So I often see these things and people complaining about the narcissist. And I'm going, well, very often the empath is more narcissistic towards herself than the narcissist ever could be, right? If you think of your own mental dialogue, how often are we so narcissistic with ourselves, telling ourselves how fat we are, how ugly we are, how unintelligent we are, how whatever, could be anything for a lot of different people.
Those are all negative identities.
It's all trauma.
Exactly.
Yeah, all trauma. And it's amazing. Narcissistic people, and I'm going to go spiritual on you. I believe it's Jezebel spirit. It looks the same. It's very powerful, and it's very prevalent right now in our society. It's curable. It's just getting that person to realize they're traumatized.
So schizophrenia is curable also. Something that the psychiatry doesn't want you to even think about. They're telling these people, this is a life sentence. All you can do is take our toxic medicines.
Yeah.
That's despicable as far as
they say there's no hope. If you have a narcissist in your life, cut them out, flee from them. There's no hope for them. I don't know about anybody else, but my God doesn't make anybody unreasonable.
There's a reason you engage with a narcissist. So then I would say, what did you learn through the experience?
Yes. Yeah.
Because very often you learn how to be compassionate.
Yes.
And if you're properly healed, you'll learn compassion. Doesn't mean that individual is right in what they're doing, but you're then able to understand why they behave the way they do, which means you no longer judge them, which means you can now love them from a distance. They don't interfere in your space anymore. It's very interesting how these things work out.
Brave for them once you understand. Especially, I mean, it's quite easy to recognize overt narcissism. I've dealt more with covert, and once you recognize it, it's not offensive. It's not how dare you. It's kind of like sympathy. It's traumatized.
Exactly.
So medications are not going to touch any of that.
Right.
They're not going to do anything for that. Matter of fact, you on the planet right now, there's more psychiatrists, more psychologists, more social workers and more psychiatric medication than there has ever been in the history of mankind. Our prisons are full. Our mental hospitals are full to overflowing. We've got people committing crimes and harming other people with mass shootings. We've got wars. We're in worse shape than we've ever been. None of that chemical crap is doing anything. We're not physical. We're spiritual beings in a physical body. You have to be able to get at the spirit. It's the spirit that manifests these things.
Yes, exactly.
Damaged spirit and these negative identities that cause the damage.
And that's really oftentimes because of someone else's BS infliction, their projection that they inflicted upon you as a child or an infant, or maybe even as an adult, if you've been in a destructive situation for an ongoing period of time.
Well, there's no living on this planet without trauma. Everybody's going to suffer some trauma. But you look at what's going on in the United States right now. Almost 50,000 people commit suicide every year in the United States. That's as many that died in the entire Vietnam War. And this is year after year after year after year. Most of them are on some kind of antidepressant.
Yeah.
You know, what other species of animal on this planet kills themselves at such a rate? It just doesn't happen.
That's actually very disturbing. I'm just sitting here thinking I should actually check the suicide rates in South Africa at the moment, but I'm just thinking, I remember when COVID started and the lockup began, within 3 months, the domestic violence rate in South Africa increased by 87%. I mean, if that's not mental illness exposing itself, because obviously that was the first time that people had to just, I guess, no one was used to being locked down. So of course everyone's demons were coming out to play. I mean, it was shocking, actually.
Well, that whole COVID thing was demonic.
Yeah.
And I'm shocked that Fauci is still walking around free after all this. It just infuriates me.
Yeah. The other thing I saw during lockdown, and I did actually see patients kill themselves during that time. I'm sure, Jerry, you did too. Was a lot of people overly went online and got into things they shouldn't have gotten into. And that also increased the amount of demon activity. I have several in mind that I've been working with who, out of boredom, went down avenues they shouldn't have gone down, opened doors they shouldn't have opened.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think a lot of people, that was such a time where depression, mental health, because a lot of people were on their own. And also remember, no one could go to anyone's funeral. There were so many people dying. No one could go to funerals. There was that trauma. It was such a crazy time. Wow.
Ridiculous. I probably need to see Jerry or another practitioner just to move that anger away, because of the amount of additional trauma it created in families. I have personal friends who couldn't go and be with their mom as she was in hospice care, it was ridiculous and not needed. Absolutely not needed. And we know that now. We know that it was all nonsense.
It was definitely their way of dividing and conquering. And
it was a demonic ploy.
And putting fear in everyone. The amount of fear we had to work with was unbelievable. Are you going to wear your mask, Janet? I don't want to see you if you don't wear your mask.
I walked out of doctor's offices when they said I had to wear a mask. I said, okay. So I'm done. I'm out of here. Dentist, I told the dentist, you make me wear a mask, I'm going to go find another dentist.
Like I'm sitting there, I was wearing a mask, are you ridiculous?
Yeah. So they're digging in your mouth the whole time. You're breathing the whole time. And you got to wear a mask while you're sitting there waiting for them to see you. How insane can that be?
So, Jerry, I worked at a hospital during that time, and the hospital was losing so much money that they wanted us to keep the same mask on for several days. This is so gross. I'm not doing it.
But the poor kids, for me, it was those poor children. And did you remember the rashes? People started coming up with these, and especially the kids, and these tiny little things in nursery school that couldn't wear a mask, and then parents were kicked off the plane. And oh my God, it was a nightmare. Thank God we're not there anymore. Wow. Oh, that brings up anger in me.
Well, they're still
Yeah,
trying. Now they're trying to bird flu and whatever else other crap they can come up with.
They've been
They're
doing.
yeah,
still
exactly.
trying.
Now it's bird flu, and yeah,
The eye
exactly.
opener for me was I'd fly a lot during COVID because I traveled for nursing. And they'd have infants on the plane. Some infants were crying. And I'm thinking, if this is so deadly, why are they allowing infants on the plane without any kind of protection? How is that logical? So 2 and above, they need protection, okay, with a mask, but infants don't. Is that logical? And would you
Wow.
bring your infant on a plane if you thought this was deadly? Would you let an infant on a plane if it was deadly? I didn't
Of
get it.
course not. It was just, I mean, it was, again, I think that was probably the biggest human experiment that the demonics conducted on us at any given time.
Yep.
I
Out of every pandemic that there has been in history, yes, they've had it, but never to this extreme. But the good thing is that it's woken a lot of people up, even though a lot of people have maybe gone down and gone into fear and what have you, because a lot of people did go into fear and took the bloody jab because of fear reasons. You know, me, there's no ways on God's green earth you ever will ever in a quadrillion bazillion years see me line up for that thing. If they want to give it to me, they'd have to come here, and about 50 500-pound guys would have to come here to hold me down, and even then they won't get it right.
In Australia now, they're anybody who didn't take it, they're going to come and hold you down and inject you. That's what they're doing over there now in New Zealand.
Well, that's scary.
The home of the deep state.
I'm going there for the conference. No,
Oh, is that where it's going to be in New
Australia
Zealand?
is
I thought it was
rotten.
Australia.
pardon?
I thought it was Australia.
I don't. I thought they lifted it because there's no requirement right now. So if there's a requirement, I'm gonna have to cancel.
Yeah, well, you take it, make sure.
Yeah.
Well, I can know there's a lot that's going on in Australia. We know Australia is the home of the deep state. And if you just have to listen to some of my survivors that I speak to, the most worst, hideous, disgusting, depraved stories come from Australia. It is one big secret underground brotherhood tunnel. Seriously. Because if you think about the early days, they sent the prisoners over there. So these guys have been experimented on. I was speaking to guys that were in these boys' homes. It's a complete MK Ultra setup. There's a notorious Australian serial killer, Ivan Milat was his name. He's dead now. That guy, Ivan Milat, was in the boys' home at the same time that my guest was on. And they MK Ultra'd him to do those serial murders. Now, Australia is disgusting. You
Yeah,
just
it's
look over
gone.
the top, it's like this police state from hell.
Yeah, they're
I've
gone.
got so many South Africans live there. All the South Africans run away to Australia because it's similar to, like, the countryside is similar to South Africa. But one of my best friends lives there now. She said to me, I said, yeah, the grass is not green on the other side.
I did a kind of a because I'm going there in October and I wanted to learn all I could, and I stumbled onto the Aborigines and what we've done or what the country has done to the native people there is horrific.
It's all over, Janet. If you look at South Africa, you look at our Bushman, Khoisan, the first tribes that you're not even hearing about anymore in Namibia. They've pushed them to the corner of the driest, most arid parts. These tribes are not even allowed to hunt for themselves anymore. They're put into reserves. And of course, any African tribe, their pride and joy is their hunting, right? They're not allowed to hunt. The game rangers shoot them their back. They take it to them once a month or whenever and give them their food. All the pride has been taken away. Same thing with the Native American people in America. Yeah. They have no rights. I'm disgusted.
They're being
That,
destroyed by alcohol and drugs.
yeah,
It's really bad. Yes, I used to work on an Indian reservation. It's terrible. It's terrible.
It
Yeah.
is. It's awful.
and this is, we all have to answer. Man, look at South Africa in our apartheid era. It's been gone for what now, 30 years.
I still
And in
remember
the time,
that.
yeah, but in the time, I want to tell you, the past 30 years, we've certainly had to pay the price for our forefathers. Not that it's a bad thing. I think that's been part, and it's still part of the rectification process. But we had a Truth and Reconciliation Committee straight after that, where a lot of these guys were, these cops, and just disgusting, the dirty cops, horrible stuff that went down here. But also what happens now is BEE, Black Economic Empowerment. If you have a middle-sized business, you have to give 51% of your business to a Black partner. Give. Not pay, give. So that's the way that they rectify that. So, and if you don't do that, then you have to then invest in other training programs and stuff like that. Not a bad thing, because, even though we were not the perpetrators of that, I grew up in the height of apartheid. I was horrified because my heart was never in it. I could never understand why it was the way it was. And I fought against it my whole life. But, so it's not a bad thing. But at some point, people have to understand, that there's a price energetically that we pay. And whether it's on a macrocosm or a microcosmic level, and that's what we're doing here now, and the more notice we take of collectively the atrocities we've created in this world, because collectively we have. I don't know if you guys know the Pono, that I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. It's that Hawaiian
deal.
Yeah, I tell you, I Ho'oponopono my way through life. I would be teaching yoga in one of the maximum prisons right now if I didn't. I'd be up for murder, I'm sure. But
I think when we're walking in love, in our true self, and we're awake. I mean, now keep in mind, I have a huge military family, and even waking up to the atrocities of what we thought were good, what we were brainwashed to believe was patriotic and good, nothing to do with what God is calling us to do and be,
exactly.
The lies. And that's really hard when you have a family of military and they participated in, we call that moral injury. You start waking up to, what is it I participated in? I was told that this was good and patriotic, and now I'm waking up to going, I participated in
genocide.
Some of them genocide.
You should listen to the interviews I've done with Caleb Jade. He was trained for the shadow military, and he was trained in magic. He's like a master of all 9 levels of magic. He spent 35 years in the arcane. He's half Native American, half German, so bloodlines, and of course all of the spiritual gifts. And then alongside the military career in the arcane, being trained in the arcane to go into the most insane places. They go through these different dimensions, hunting giants, fetching artifacts that come from the old world Tartaria. They're traveling through different dimensions. It's insane. And all in the name of basically what the whole Antichrist thing that they were finding those artifacts for them. These guys come out there and it's like suddenly waking up. And I mean, I don't know how that guy is still alive is a miracle, but lots of PTSD. And telling his story, I want to tell you, for the first time, it took him a very long time. And he talks, but lots of PTSD, lots of injections they got, and cubes, and all sorts of things that amp them up and make them superhuman. Hey, it's
That's
insane.
one of the things. My husband works for an airline, And when that injection came out for COVID, he's like, what's it matter? They put so much into me in the military. And I'm like, this is far different. You know, not that what they put in him was good, but have you ever seen the government care about our health? Have they ever cared about our health? Oh, we're worried about you. We want you to take this injection.
Sure.
That should be like your spidey sense should be going, what?
Yeah, especially when they agreed to pay for it for free. Come and get it for free. Yeah, just go come and get it.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're unpatriotic and you're risking everybody else's life.
I mean, we were like, yes, you're not getting it. Well, then I'll lose my job. Yeah, but you'll live.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'll live. But it's also a well-known fact that in the 80s, the Americans and the Brits came here into Africa and were using AIDS. They were putting AIDS in the smallpox vaccine and infected most. AIDS was supposed to take Africa out. That's why, but it didn't. And that's how they then, because after that whole AIDS pandemic as well, then they then gave them these free smallpox injections, but then AIDS, of course, spread like wildfire. Oh, but now you've got to pay us for the cure, and you can't. It's like the stuff that John, the Confessions of Economic Hitman, John Perkins talks about. Going into countries that put them into debt and there's no ways that they can repay, and then they claim the resources. That's how they claim 27 African countries' resources. That's what they did.
The Chinese are doing that right now.
Yeah, they're doing it here too. I mean,
it's insane.
Go into places like Florida, they're pricing out the retired people. Rents are going up and up, you know. We have elderly retired people who are becoming homeless. You know, Hawaii, we have investors going in and buying up all the properties so that people in Hawaii can't afford to live anymore. It's crazy.
Well, they use that particle beam to burn down Lahaina over there. I mean, that you could see that the metal on the cars was melted, but there was trees right next to it standing.
Yeah.
You know.
Wow. Yeah, and the blue, everything blue. And now I see in China, I actually watched a video clip the other day in China. Everyone in China is putting blue tarpaulins on their house, and they're saying, what do the Chinese know that we don't know? So it seems like the Chinese are gearing up for more DEW attacks.
Yeah. It's global.
Wow.
This is global.
Yeah.
These
totally.
They're globalists. They're not tied to a country.
Yeah, just like the chemtrails. I mean, I've seen them all over the United States, and every state I've been to. I saw them in Mexico, and it wasn't Mexican planes that were spraying that stuff. You know, they sprayed Alamos so much that they blotted out the sun with that stuff.
Yeah,
it's exactly, and I was reading something about that the other day as well, is because the sun, you know, really humanity is at a time of transformation now. We can transform. We can either go positive or negative, and if you're going to follow that crap, there's no doubt that you're going to get sucked down that rabbit hole. You know, their whole thing is they've given us every tool in the book to disconnect us from our spirit, walking around with these dumbass cell phones all day, every day, turning us into little greedy buying robots that has no sense of self except what I look like when I look in the mirror. I mean, you got to look at all over. It's like that, you know, or you become service to others. You know, you're either going to realize we've got to do this together. If we want to move in a beautiful, unified place, we've got to all hold hands, move in a harmony and unison together and make this happen for all of us. So I'm happy I'm the latter. Yay.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think all of these conspiracy theories are demonic. They're a distraction, and we can get stuck deep into them to where we're so distracted looking for the rabbit in the hole. instead of focusing on what we really should be focusing on. And I'm going
Right.
to go a little bit deeper. And I felt this when I was in the industry working. We are kind of trapped into a demonic matrix. We're either slaving for somebody, or the people who have achieved their own companies, who are having people work for them, they're just building things to put more of us enslaved. It really is kind of a slave society until you break out of it and go, I don't have to do this anymore.
Exactly.
And there's so much freedom, because I can't tell you how many people I work with who go, I can't stand one more day of going to work. I mean, people aren't even respected anymore. They're just slaving for,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
And they
And the
start it
more
when they're kids, when they're little kids. Go to school, sit there, do what the teacher tells you, you know, listen to authority,
exactly.
and just, do what they tell you. I mean, from the time you're a kid all the way down to up into graduate school, it's the same thing. Only it's worse than graduate school.
And they own the
It
education system. So yeah, it's a
And
brainwash.
isn't it funny that
Yes,
those of us who are
brainwash.
always in trouble are doing these platforms now?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was always sent to the back of the class. I had to go sit in some area.
I have a hard time even doing the whole political conversation anymore. I'm like, I
Mm.
can't do it. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
for my leaders, whatever they are, to just pray for, our own individual protection and that on how they're running the country. But who we're given choices for are so far gone anymore. They're nobody we would select on our own, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Well, I think carry on. Sorry.
I'm going to get lots of negative comments about, the people who love the right and vice versa. I just pray for our leaders, but keep my eyes on God, because I
For
don't
sure,
follow men.
I
So,
agree. I agree. When the minute we make someone our hero, we're in deep shit.
yes.
We really are.
Yeah.
No one is here to save us. We are here to apply the teachings of whatever spiritual denomination works for you, and different ones work for different people, and as long as it's coming from a place of love
Yeah.
and kindness and compassion, I
Yeah.
have no problem. And I think that's really what we should be all working towards, and working with each other, and just stop the judgment. The minute we put down our judgy voices, we can then gather, and that's why I say this is what we need to do. This is how we break free of this matrix, this demonic matrix, is to free your mind. We have to free our minds. It's the mindset that we have that enslaves us, that we believe we have to work for the bank or work for the school or work for an organization because they're paying my pension or whatever. It's so much of that. When we realize the power we have within us, if only we realized it. And it's like, bing, it's like a spring. And then you suddenly meet other people who you can collaborate with. And
Right.
everyone has something that adds into this beautiful, wonderful, game we call life.
And unfortunately, far too many people are turning their power over to psychiatry and medicine. You look at what psychiatrists are doing; they're just dumbing down the population, and at a massive level. There's nothing that they give you that doesn't dumb you down. Except
Right.
maybe Ritalin, the other thing. But it's just, you look at this. Try to get an appointment with a psychiatrist. They're 6 months out. People are just pouring in there to be drugged by these drugs that are just dumbing them out and making them numb and not caring about anything. I mean, that's what the
Exactly.
deep state wants.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
One of the
And
cool,
the
oh, go ahead.
no, you go ahead, please.
The cool things Mace also taught me Whereas the positive identities aren't important either. They're necessary to survive here, but they're not who we are either. You know,
Exactly.
I'm not the wife, the mother, the grandmother. I'm not the practitioner. When I stand before God, I'm not giving him my resume. I am a being. I'm an energetic being. And that's the most humble you can be, is when you approach God just as that being of light connected with God. That's who truly we are. So even meditating on removing the positive identities and just realizing we are
Just
energetic,
being, just being,
full
and
of
being at ease.
love and peace.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah,
really who we
absolutely.
are.
I
So
love that. Thank you so much. I think that's a nice little paragraph there from you that we can wrap up with from your side, Janet. Jerry, is there anything from your side you'd just like to say before
Well,
we?
I think, if you're thinking about going to a psychiatrist and getting drugged, please try causism first. You can go to www.causism.com. So that,
It's all in the description area. Jerry's website, as well as Janet's details. If you look in the description area in the video below, you'll find it there. And go and check it out, guys. And honestly, I will highly recommend that if you've got any. The thing with people is that so many people think, because it's also, we've been told over and over again by doctors, that's incurable, that, you've got to take that to manage it, and you've got to take steroids for this and the pain and what have you. And people don't realize that your energy is the master key to how good you feel. So just to have a session, a Mace session, and get your energy aligned will drain away a half a ton of like gunk, right, out of your life. It's insane what happens. So not insane, it's amazing. So if any of you, and this is from me, I've had, for those of you who weren't tuned in earlier, I've had 2 Mace sessions with Jerry. I will highly recommend them. There's nothing invasive, nothing intrusive. It's
hurt.
you working with spirit. Your spirit heals you. Jerry acts as your guide and your facilitator. You do the work, and it's not even work. It's fun. And you feel like amazing afterwards. So I would highly recommend
it too. It's fun to watch people get the aha.
Yes,
download.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's
And
permanent.
even if you
Changes are permanent. They don't come back like they do with regular psychotherapy. They're gone.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like once it's gone, it's gone. And that's the beauty, because now you're building something new now. You're not heckling with your past anymore. You've let that go. You're at ease with that. You're now building something new with your recycled bricks, which look much prettier than those ugly old ones that you had before.
Yeah.
Right. And it's really amazing. And even if you think your condition is beyond repair or too far gone or whatever, I still want to say take a chance. Take a chance.
And it's a lot cheaper than going to a psychiatrist and paying for their toxic, expensive medications that don't work.
Right.
Exactly. So thank you so much. And I love what Charmaine said. Thank you so much, Shanti. You always have the best guests on your shows. There, guys.
Like that. Thank you for having me on. And again, I'm always grateful when we get the message out. There's hope. There's tons of
absolutely.
Yes. So thank you.
Definitely
ditto that.
We will definitely do it again. So I want to say thank you so much, everybody. I love having these conversations, because it just makes us realize that healing is available to everyone.
Yes.
And you don't have to, it doesn't have to be some big concocted, convoluted thing. Just try it. That's all I want to say. If you're battling with PTSD, with trauma, with pain, physical health, because remember the physical manifestation is always going to come later than the energetic block up. It's going to take a while of repetition, of ignoring before it manifests physically. So in order to heal the physical body, you've got to go and heal the energetic body first. And this is brilliant for that. So, yay. Thank you, everybody. God bless you all. Take good care of yourselves. And I will definitely see you guys again as well.
Thank you again.